So now I would like just to introduce our president, President Mark Camille, who will offer opening remarks. President Camille.
Thank you, Sean, and good evening. And I see that we're still getting settled. I had a chance to start to try to say hello to folks. I think most of you know that the president that I am following served at Albertus Magnus for 34 years. And I started this summer, so my tenure at this institution is relatively new. But among the many things that I've learned early on in this job is it is a job where you have to often be in multiple places at one time, and this is one of those nights where actually right now I'm supposed to be in 3 different places. But turns out you can only be in one place at one time, so I'm thrilled to be with you. And in the 8 months that I've been on the job now, I have fallen in love with this institution and what it stands for, and with this community. I grew up in the Boston area, but I have been out of New England for more than 2 decades now, so I'm happy to be back. I have quickly learned, by the way, that in this area you have to be careful if you talk about being a fan of the Red Sox or of the Yankees. You can get into trouble either way, so I can be a fan of both. But I have really come to appreciate what I will call the richness of the New Haven area. And of course, we are in the midst of celebrating Black History Month. And as I think about this panel gathering tonight, it is appropriate that we come together, that we hear from those who advocate on behalf of the needs of the Black community in the New Haven area. Thinking about the relevance and the appropriateness of this institution bringing people together in this way. When I think about Albertus Magnus College today Albertus Magnus College educates an extremely diverse student body. You may not realize that more than half of our students at Albertus Magnus are students of color. You may not realize that more than half of our students at Albertus Magnus College are Pell Grant recipients. You may not realize that nearly half of our students at Albertus Magnus College come from or are first-generation students. This is my 29th year working in higher education. What I have come to appreciate, endorse, and passionately advocate for is that if we are to achieve academic excellence, diversity is a requirement. Diversity of experiences, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of perspectives. It is what our world is today, and without question, it is what our world will be tomorrow. So I am sure, as I look at those who are on the panel, we will have a lively conversation tonight, and I hope you will engage with them in discussion. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize and thank a few individuals who have worked, frankly, tirelessly to try to organize this event tonight. I'll begin with Kim Washington, and Kim is from Mothers Demand Action, and my colleague, Associate Professor of Sociology, Dr. Karen Kendrick, the 2 of them really led efforts. There are a number of others on our campus, though, who have worked tirelessly to try to bring tonight's event together, including Carol Huckaby, who I now realize has a fan section. And Carol is an instructor and an internship coordinator in our psychology and human services programs. Also, Associate Professor of Political Science and Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs, Dr. Ross Edwards. I know Ross is here somewhere. And then a number of individuals from the administration, including from our marketing area, Vice President Andrea Kovacs, Karen Giordano, our Vice President for Development, Carolyn Bean, and in our Academic Affairs Office, Maureen Koss. And then, of course, Dr. O'Connell, who has volunteered to serve as the MC this evening. You all are a very polite audience. But I consider it a great privilege to serve as the president of this college. I mentioned to you I have fallen in love with what it stands for. I've been out and about in this community in a very intentional way throughout New Haven, attending meetings in Newhallville, East Rock, engaging with folks in Hamden, in the city, trying to, on the one hand, learn and hear the stories about Albertus Magnus, of course, but also coming to appreciate the greater New Haven area. And I have yet to meet anyone who doesn't have favorable things to say about Albertus Magnus College. But I've also picked up on there's a little bit of a sense of Albertus is a quiet little place, does its thing. But when I look at the stories of impact of this college and I hear them from our alumni, and I don't care if they're from the decades of the 40s and 50s or more recently, and I don't care if they came here as traditional age students or adults who completed degrees or earned advanced degrees, they are stories of impact. And they're transformational. So I will tell you, moving forward, we will continue to have a sense of humility about us at Albertus Magnus College. Our mission and our values call upon us to be so. But you're going to hear us talk about impact in our story with maybe a bit more pride, a bit more vocally, a bit more proudly as we move forward. But I also assure you that as we move forward, we will continue to be committed to, and we will seek ways to engage more meaningfully with the members of our surrounding communities. So thanks for being here tonight. Thank you to our panelists. We're grateful for your presence. Look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Camille. I don't know if it's necessary now, but to introduce Carol Huckaby, but Professor Huckaby has been a member of our Human Services Department in the graduate program for a number of years now. She, as you all know, has been a tireless leader in the community who's worked on social justice, on mental health issues, on human services issues. And so it's a great pleasure to welcome her and to turn the podium over to her to conduct what I know will be a very interesting conversation. Carol.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connell, Dr. Camille. I'm a little shorter than you guys are. Thank you all for coming. It's a great turnout, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the panel. We have with us Mayor Leng, the mayor of Hamden. We have Reverend Bonita Grubbs, who's a longtime reverend in the community and also operates Christian Community Action. We have Doris Dumas, who is a Albertus alumni also, head of the NAACP. We have Barbara Fear. Did you hear how I said that? Okay. Barbara Fear, who's also a community organizer, and we have Senator Gary Winfield. So I'm sure that you're going to enjoy the evening. So I'm going to start. For those of you who don't or haven't figured out yet, I am from Boston, so just bear with me. I have students across the scattered out. They will actually translate anything I say that you don't understand. So the purpose of this forum is to think about community organizing, past and present. In the African American community, we've been organizing for community justice as far back as slavery, and we continue to do that even to today. A lot of the issues that we've had for the last 40, 50, 60, 100, 200 years still exist. And so I'm going to ask a few questions of the panel members and have them answer. There will be time at the end for the audience to have, to ask other questions and also to give your opinion. So I'm going to start with Doris. Okay. So can you discuss how you were inspired by a local or national community activist from the past to do the work that you do now?
Sure. First, let me say good evening, and I bring greetings on behalf of the Greater New Haven branch of the NAACP. I look forward to meeting the new president, and I'm happy that this event is actually happening. It's decades behind, but it's never too late for change, and change is good, and we need to keep advancing and moving forward. So I'm grateful for everything you said. I receive it, and I plan on meeting with you to see how Albertus, which was near and dear to me, can give back and be a bigger part in our community. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll start with growing up in New Haven, and I'll age myself a little bit, but in the era that I grew up in, the Black Panthers played a big role for me. I grew up in inner city, and they fed us breakfast every morning on our way to school. But in order to go there, you had to recite positive affirmations like, Black is beautiful, I am powerful, I love my community. So the things you heard the media say are not my personal experience. My experience of a single mom of 5 children who needed that support and help of that hot breakfast every morning was that we went there for that, but we left there with seeds being planted saying that we are somebody, that we do matter. This is right after the civil rights movement. This is in the era of Dr. King. So again, hearing that, and it wasn't anti-white, it was pro-Black, and it was pro-Black because they needed to instill in us that we were important and that we mattered. And so that was my first seeds. But then I also grew up in that era with people like James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, that kind of music. Those things, also had a part, and hearing things that, I am my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper, and that my community, I'm a part of that. And lifting up my community means I'm lifting up my family and myself. So those kinds of things are experiences that I had. Also, I have to say the arts and the poetry of that time. Nikki Giovanni, I went to New Haven School, so Jackie Robinson was my first experience, and Dr. Mayo, who is now the outgoing superintendent, was our principal. And he had the Yale students coming, and he had groups from New York coming to teach after-school programs and enrichment programs. So I didn't get a lot of the history and the pride that I had from in school, but the after-school programs. And poetry, dancing, and the arts really opened up my mind and my heart to the beauty of being a Black person. So I always grew up knowing that my community was important, that I mattered, that my skin color was okay, and I could be okay in that skin, and that it was just as good as anyone else. So those kinds of things. And then I went to James Hillhouse High School, and we had a great experience. I remember when Jesse Jackson first started the Rainbow Coalition, he came to Hillhouse. So he was a young man, and we had examples like him, and Malcolm X's daughter came, and other people came, and they were speaking life into us and telling us that it was okay to be who we were, and that the world was out there, and that we too could be somebody. And those things really formed who I was. Now, I'm not gonna paint a pretty picture, because this was the 80s by the time I got in high school. So drugs were happening in New Haven, and guns were everywhere. So you had choices, but it's the seeds that were planted for me. I could have chosen any path, but I decided that I wanted to make a difference. So I had been involved with community service, giving back, and activism since I was in high school. I got involved, I was on the boards for everything, I was chairing everything, and I really took an active role as a high school student. I felt empowered. And that started from meeting the Black Panthers, and then we used to have a thing in New Haven, the Black Expo, and many of you that are older remember that. And everything was positive, the music, the poetry. I remember buying a necklace that says, I'm Black and I'm proud, and I wore it proudly. And it wasn't that I was against any other group, but it was that I needed people to recognize that I understood that I came from greatness and I was okay where I was. So it was a natural progression for me to move into the NAACP and other groups like that, to take a role to say, I want to make a difference, I want to see advancements, and this is where it starts. It starts with me. If I want to see the difference, I have a choice. I can just complain and be on the outside, or I can be in the mix, and it's a lot of hard work. Being a member, and especially the president of NAACP, which is a volunteer organization, is a lot of work. But these doors that we're opening, that are open to people of color like me, didn't happen if it wasn't for people that were involved with the NAACP. I understood that then, and I've been committed to it, so that's how I got involved.
Thank you so very much. So continuing to look at the past, Reverend Grubbs, in the past 50 years, what are some of the major contributions of African American community organizing in the cities of New Haven and Hamden?
So I was not born and raised in New Haven. I was born and raised in Hartford. And so a lot of my experiences were not connected to New Haven specific. But I think I would mention the start that I had gotten was actually in Hartford. And it was a pastor of the church that I attended at the time. He happened to be a close personal friend of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. His name was Earl Lawson. He was a tough guy, was quite involved in the Boston area around school desegregation and busing. He did street walking during the time that he was pastor. So a lot of what I learned, a lot of the activism that I later have been exposed to, had to do and found its root in him. And the example that he presented, he didn't just preach, he walked. He didn't just teach, he acted. And I remember at one point before he died, I went to see him. He died at the age of 92 a couple of years ago. And he talked about how, I didn't know this, so you know, there is such a thing as learning something new every day. But he told me about how Martin King met him at the Boston airport, and how he told him that he was about ready to leave Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and that he should go down to the church and preach, and he would recommend Earl for the pastorate. It did not happen, but that was the kind of example. And I think all of us, I would bet, have examples of people who have done things, have made an impression, who have influenced the work that they later do. And so that level of energy, that level of principle, that level of commitment, that level of activism really had a huge impact on me. I had finished my college years, and so it was after I had graduated, being involved in all-girls school in Massachusetts. And I was trying to figure out who I was and what it is that I wanted to do. And so he came along at a point that was very important to me, and was really the person whose footsteps I followed in the ministry that I have been selected to and have been involved in for all of these years. Last year I celebrated 30 years of ordained ministry, and that's been a gift. Sometimes a pain in the neck, but it's been a gift nonetheless, because that example, his example, and how it was more than just being involved in, you know, and limiting himself into the walls of the church and what was happening in the church, I think had a huge impact on me, to the point where I again began to think about ministry. So I would say that it was personal.
Okay.
And that personal influence actually ended up creating another sort of direction for me. And as I began to look around, became involved in voter registration, and other actions that I've taken and other things that I've watched over time, both within the Black community and outside of the Black community, because here's what I understand. That a lot of the change doesn't happen just because Black folks are involved. There happens to be a broad-based coalition of individuals who engage and are sympathetic to the cause and fight for justice in the same way. Folks in the civil rights movement were not only African American,
right.
they were Jewish and white, all over the racial map, and so we need partners. The last thing I'll say is, and this is the most recent one, I would recommend highly, not that I'm trying to encourage book reading, but but I read a couple of years ago a book by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called David and Goliath. And in that book is a story, an interview actually, with Wyatt T. Walker, who died a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago. And he talked about how they organized their activism. And he was the executive director of the Southern Christian Leadership Council and decided that he would sort of agitate Bull Connor. So I said to myself, oh, I never knew that he was engaged in that kind of activism. So it was a learning experience for me as I read through that book. And I concluded as a result that the fight for justice is multifaceted. You know, you just can't have protest. You've got to have people who are engaged in strategic thinking, getting a lay of the land, and a whole host of other things that are, I think, part of the movement and part of what happened in the civil rights movement and other movements to be able to make the gains that I think we have made as a people and as a community.
Okay, thank you very much. So still thinking about the past, Ms. Fear, why is it important for today's community organizers and activists to know their history?
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm really honored to do so. You failed to mention that I'm also an alumni. I'm very proud alumni of Albertus.
She's an alumni of Albertus.
And so, for me, it's important, just as an individual, to know my history, because I feel you have to know where you came from before you can move forward. Mm-hmm. When you know the history of organizing, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, the problems, the challenges, when you know all of that stuff, it helps you as you lay a map down for yourself for organizing. So that's why it's always been very, very important. I'm an avid reader around African American history. I never got it in high school, but when I went to college, I took a lot of classes around African American history and educated myself on that, and that has helped me to lay the groundwork for the work that I do around activism. I also was inspired and know history from the Black Panther. His name was Freddie Harris, who lived right next door to me. And so I learned a lot from that organization. So much has played a role in where I am today, but it all began from me knowing from where I first originated from. And I'm still trying to find more knowledge on that, because I feel like I'm not whole unless I know where I came from, how I got here, and all the things that the people before me went through to get me where I am. Because I didn't just decide to be an organizer. It's something that I got into following the path of those who were here before me. So I proudly honor those who were here before me, because they are the one who planted the seeds in my ear and in my brain and in my soul, the work that I need to do for as long as I can. And now I'm passing that down to my kids.
Thank you. Senator Winfield, I'm sorry. Over the last 50 to 60 years, we seem to have forgotten how complicated the civil rights movement was, how much debate there was in the movement over goals and strategies, how much white violence and backlash occurred, and just how much was at stake for participants in the entire country. So my question to you is, can you speak about the lessons we need to remember from the civil rights movement as we move forward in America today?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Okay.
I think we need to remember everything you just said. I listen to some of the young people, and I don't discount that they are different than some people who came before them. But I do think that there's a certain level of hubris to say things like, if it were me, they could get these hands, when you haven't had a gun or a hose or something else in your face. As someone who once was a little bit younger than I am, and had a certain mentality that was equivalent to that. Mm-hmm. I did a little bit of work in Virginia on racism, and one day discovered what it is to actually have the gun put to you. And at that point, my perspective on a lot of things changed. And so I think it is critical for us to study history to make sure we accurately understand what the history was and why people operated the way they did before we're so sure how we're going to operate. At the point where that happened to me, if you had asked me before that point, I would have said certain things that I did not say, and I would have operated in ways I did not operate. Now, what happened to me was I was basically given an ultimatum, and I slowly came to the realization that although my life would be at stake, I couldn't function without being who I had wanted to be, right? But in that instance, I was not who I wanted to be. And that actually changed the way that I operate today. So I think we do need to go back and pay attention to people who have come before us, and actually pay attention to the people who have held up our movement, because we talk about people, but we don't talk about all of the people who have held up the movement. And if we go back and we look at particularly the women that held up our movement, I think we would look at the movement a lot differently.
Right.
So if I had been asked the first question, I would have actually mentioned Barbara, because Barbara and I worked together on some things in the city. And I think, you know, there are a lot of things that are said about Barbara, but one of the things that needs to be said about her is that she is a mother who has given voice and life to a lot of people in this community. Okay. And when you go back and you look, that is what you see over and over again. And I think those are the kind of things we must remember if we're going to talk about the civil rights movement. It's great to talk about King. It's great to talk about Malcolm X. It's great to talk about, you can go through A. Philip Randolph. You can go through a list of people. But if you forget about those women, you have forgotten about the movement.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you for that, because we do need to be remembered. So Mayor Leng, I have a question for you about the present. Connecticut is consistently among the top states in the country for income disparity and residential segregation. From the standpoint of the Mayor of New Haven, what is being done at the state and local level to address racial, ethnic, and class divisions in our region?
I'm going to leave the state portions for. Can I take this off?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me? There we go. I'm going to leave the state portions for Senator Winfield.
Okay. Fair.
But as I sit here and listen to the first portion of this panel, the first thought that comes to my mind is that I will never be able to fully grasp the experiences of the other individuals at this table. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm white. Now, the one theme that came across, and I think that I can talk about as a mayor and as a public servant, is that our job is to help people. And what we do on a local level is we try to offer programs, we try to communicate, we try to prioritize funding opportunities for things that are going to really affect families. And in an era of shrinking resources and a very evolving society, which I hope we're going to dig into more during this discussion, it's all the more important that every municipal government, every state government really focuses on what their core values are. And in Hamden, what we've tried to do over the last couple of years is to refocus some of our resources toward things like community centers and services, toward community policing and walking beats. And actually, Jihad is here. And I don't mean to call you out, but I have to, because I was so impressed with you when we met and when we brought on your organization into Hamden. We brought in New Haven Family Alliance to have a street worker outreach program, so we can actually have direct impact with some of the kids in our community that are at a real crossroads. So I don't want to take up a ton of time. I want to engage in this conversation, but I think that our role is to work to help folks in every way that we can, because we are living in a society right now where I don't think people listen to each other. I think they talk at each other. And I think we talk a lot about diversity as a buzzword. But I think that diversity means many different things to many people, and I'm going to leave it at this part. It does not mean to many what I think it should mean for my community.
Okay.
And I want to talk about that more as we go along. And thank you very much for.
You can talk about that right now, absolutely.
So, a lot of people talk about celebrating diversity. Celebrating diversity isn't having a diversity dinner.
Right.
It's not pointing out that we have a number of different races that live in the town of Hamden. It is digging into an elementary school like Shepherd Glen and finding out that in our elementary school we have 27 languages spoken. And in that community, somehow, despite all those challenges, it is one of our successful schools, and it's one of our schools where the teachers are staying the longest without transferring to different schools, and trying to find out where. So there's some success that's happening there, and I do not think it's a coincidence that the diversity factor is a coincidence of why the school is being successful. So how can we take models of success that we find in our communities and promote them and duplicate them? And then also, how can we really, as not only governments, but as neighbors, as neighborhoods, as communities, have meaningful conversation, meaningful dialogue about the differences among people, because there are differences among people. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think people are afraid to have conversations sometimes because they may have some experience in their past that stops them, and sometimes it's for fear of offending someone. But if you can get into a safe environment and have a good, frank conversation about a lot of different things, it can bring a lot of change.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Winfield, on the state level.
We don't, Connecticut doesn't get it unless Connecticut's embarrassed, right? So I entered the General Assembly in 2009. That's around the time we ramped up the conversation about the issues in our education system with disparities in the education system and the achievement gap. The reason we did it was not because we had the issue. We've had that issue for a long time. The reason we did it is because national reports came out and said, hey, Connecticut, you're the richest state in the nation, but you're fourth from the bottom on one measure and you're the first in the other measure at the bottom, depending on whether you were talking about money or you were just talking about differences. It didn't matter. It was black folks and brown folks we were talking about who were at the bottom in terms of the achievement gap. And so then Connecticut said, well, let's start doing something. And when they started doing something, then what they started doing was just throwing anything against the wall. They didn't say, well, let's go figure out what the problem is, right? They wanted to do something to look like they were doing something. They didn't want to do something to fix the problem. That's the reality. And so, we have housing segregation of all sorts. And, a year ago or so, we passed a bill to further increase housing segregation in this state. There was a war up at the state capitol and nobody cared, right? Because some people don't like black and brown folks in their community and they dominate, so that's what we're gonna do in this state. That's in 2016.
Wow. Okay.
It's not 1943, 2016. And you have some people who call ourselves our allies who jump right on board with those things, right? That happens constantly. We had a bill that said, well, maybe instead of just thinking about how do we move kids inside of a school, maybe we can move people throughout the state and put them in places of higher opportunity, which we know works, right? We thought about how do we reimagine housing authorities and give them power to move people. And people fought like hell so that we didn't get those bills even raised in the state of Connecticut. So what are we doing? We're doing the same thing we've always been doing. That's what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you. Wow. So, Ms. Dumas, what would you say are the three of the most important issues facing African Americans in the New Haven community today? And the second part of that is, what are community organizers and or officials doing to address the issues?
So I would say that since you're asking me for just 3. I think all areas, when it comes to people of color, are things that we're trying to see advancements for, that are concerning to us, that we push for. But I'm going to name the 3, since you asked for 3. Of course, I'm going to start with economic equity, jobs, home ownership, equal pay, equal access, and equal opportunity. And especially for those who were formerly incarcerated. So those things are a concern, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Equitable and quality education. That is always right up there, 1 or 2. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about a little bit around full and equal voter representation. So not just people registering to vote, but actually having that power and having more people of color running for office and being a part of the process. So first things first, I'll talk about a little bit, you asked, what are we doing? Well, the NAACP, as many of you may have read in the last week, we just started a new program, an initiative called Homeownership Matters. So that program, we're actually, through the Community Foundation, able to give people $10,000 towards closing and other expenses when they want to buy a house. Now, when we talk about statistics, and I'll talk just briefly about it, you have 50,000 households in the New Haven area, 14,092. Only 28% of them own their own home. Fewer than less than 1 in every 4 households own their home. A lot of this also, especially in the urban communities, their cost burden, a lot of their rent, 30%, sometimes up to 50% of their income is going towards rent. Therefore, they're not able to save to buy a house. So the NAACP is trying to remove that barrier, and so that more people can actually own a home and have that pride and also have a piece of the dream. Because we know statistics show that when people own their home, then they have a pride in that area that they're living. And that also trickles down to education, because they're going to care more about the schools in their community. So that's one thing that we're doing, and we're also working with others to try to say everyone deserves access to own a home. That's just a piece of the pie. We also had a program, and we're trying to relaunch a program where we can have small businesses, especially for the reentry community, because several of them are unable to get hired. So we want people to be able to open their own business and hire other people. So that's another thing that's important to us and something that we're working towards. Equal pay and equal access and equal opportunity at education levels, at their job levels. We want to make sure that people of color also are advancing at these major companies in jobs, and that they have the same opportunity as everyone. So those are things that we push for. We talk about equitable and quality education. Gary hit on this, and I pulled up some statistics, and I'm going to share it with you, because this is on our watch. So I think it's important that we all know some of these statistics. A new study by the Connecticut Voices for Children concluded that black and white achievement gap in our state is because of the gap in opportunity, in the state's future could be at risk. There are some facts that I want to share. A recent report from the State Department of Education shows that black students in Connecticut have less access and opportunity than their white counterparts. Black students are 4 times more likely to be suspended than their white counterparts. Although black students make up 13% in the public schools population, only 3.5 are teachers of color. In 2015-16 school year, in pre-K through 2nd grade, records show that 1,674 students were expelled or suspended. Of that total, 1,188 were black or Latino. That is more than 70% in this group. This is statewide information. We got this from Data Haven. The good news is that in New Haven over the last year, school expulsions did fall from 23% from 40 to 17. According to the 2011, black students made up 2/3 of black students, and 50% of Hispanic students at Wilbur Cross high school graduated. Given the facts that more males are going to be affected than females, I mean, females are going to graduate more, you can imagine how many black males were affected by these statistics. In the city of New Haven, the second largest school, 58% of blacks graduated in 4 years, and 33.8% of Hispanics graduated. The fact is, the poorer the Connecticut students are, the lower their test scores. Fact, for students who attend Connecticut public schools statewide and begin college, the graduation rates are reported in 2015 at 24.4% for blacks, 21.4% for Hispanics, and it's over 54% for whites. So this is all happening on our watch. These are things that we are monitoring. We have our state NAACP. We held a forum where we were able to look at bringing in historically black colleges so that we can see how to get more people, teachers that look like the students that they're teaching. So we've been working on that. We've been meeting with the Board of Education, and we've been meeting with others to say, we need these scores to be higher. We need more students graduating, and we need to catch them before the 3rd grade, because we know if we lose them by 3rd grade, then a lot of them are going to end up being another statistics going straight to prison. So we're trying to work on these types of things, and we're working with our cities, with our mayors, with our superintendents to bring the attention to this. So some of the statistics I just wanted to say, because we need to understand that Connecticut maintains the nation's widest achievement gap, and that's unacceptable on our watch. So that's owned by all of us, and we all should own a part of that. It doesn't matter if it's your student, if it's someone else's student, it's just as important. I mean, child is just as important. So we really are trying to bring awareness around that. And the other issue that we're talking about is voter representation. We're losing ground, especially with the disenfranchised. There are people trying to block the votes. We worked so hard, but people are trying to turn back the clock, so we're looking at that. And we're also we're constantly trying to not just do voter registration, but voter education. It's important that you understand how powerful that vote is, and that every election, you should be out there voting. So those are things that we're talking about. We're trying to host events where we can get more people to get involved at every level, be it committees, be it at the state level or the local level. We feel that if you're more involved and you have issues that you care about in your community, being out there and being a part of the process, we can help advance and move our city further.
Thank you very much. So, Ms. Fear, am I doing this backwards? No. Yes. What are the key challenges for African American community organizers in New Haven and Hamden today?
Okay. I know you didn't ask this question, but I just wanted to do a little. That's me. I don't follow rules.
Okay,
but I just wanted to
okay, but we're really short on time.
No,
so,
I'm going to.
Okay, go right ahead then. Thank you.
I just wanted to go back to what Gary was saying about, when people say I'm difficult and all that kind of stuff. People need to realize that I am, as an organizer in anything that I do, I'm looking for excellence. And so when I was here at Albertus, I was on the National Dean's List, and I went through on honor roll. So everything I do is about excellence. So part of the reason I'm difficult and a problem for people is because I don't accept the mediocre BS that people want to do. Like, I believe the war on drugs was created by Nixon in 1971 to disrupt our communities and tear our families apart.
Okay.
And we know that. And yet, where are the people, the legislators, who are saying we need to end this war on drugs, because it's not about drugs, it's about destroying our community? So when people are excited about things like passing medical marijuana or decriminalizing, I'm saying, no, we got to end the war on drugs.
Okay.
So for me, that's been some of my biggest challenges, is because I'm not willing to accept mediocre stuff. I want the real work to be done.
Okay.
And part of that in organizing in New Haven is one of the biggest issues I face is apathy. Or,
Okay.
I mean, people believe that things are not going to change. I talk to people about, We need to have the people who are mostly impacted in the forefront of these things that we're fighting. And when I talk to people, they'll say, well, you know, this is how it is. This is the way it's always been. It's the way it's always going to be. And so they don't feel nothing's going to change. So that's the biggest challenge I have in doing the organizing work that I do.
Okay, thank you very much. Reverend Grubbs, New Haven and Hamden seem to have really embraced the model of community organizing and service provision through nonprofit organizations, and I know that your organization is very successful. So can you speak to the pros and cons of the nonprofit model for achieving social change?
So let me say a couple of things about that. One is that I spend a little bit of time at the state capitol because I think it's important to understand the environment in which I provide services. And a lot of the time, the focus of social service providers is, so how much more money can I get for my programs? And that is, while I understand that point of view, I know that the issue is bigger than just how much your budget is and how much money, how much you pay your staff and what kinds of things you do. For me, it's about the population that I am serving, and that means more to me than, not that I don't like money, don't get me wrong, but that means more to me because of what we do to help individuals move along is a testament to also what they do for themselves. So it's a participatory kind of activity in which we are engaged. We have a group called Mothers for Justice, and it's been around since 1993. They do stuff that I can't do. They rabble-rouse because they have independent voices, and there's a lot of time that my staff member spends to try to help them to be able to speak on their own behalf and not just have providers speak for them. And I think it's critical to be able to understand who you're dealing with and what strategies you use in order to make sure that you can be effective and hopefully win something. I was involved in 1993 with passage of the income tax with the Interfaith Coalition of People. I was involved in the healthcare arena because with a group of clergy from across the state who believed that there was something that needed to be done a little bit further down the road than the work that we do individually with trying to give Mothers for Justice, members of Mothers for Justice, a voice. The strategies are multiple. It's not just one particular thing that you do. I mean, I want to commend another book to you. It's The Civil Rights Movement and the Women Who Started It. And I can't tell you all of what had happened, but Joanne Gibson Robinson was indeed involved in the Women's Political Caucus. They did a whole lot of stuff. There were a whole lot of strategies. And when it got to the place where they were meeting with the supervisors and they still couldn't get through, then they engaged with the Montgomery Improvement Association and the NAACP. So it became a collaborative effort that was that had multiple strategies associated with it. So I think I would say really generally is that you got to understand where it is that you are. Everybody has limitations. So because that is the case, then you try to connect with somebody else who doesn't have that same kind of limitation, because you can go raise sand over there while I sit there and smile and say, oh, isn't it nice? But we're all on the same page. We're all working towards the same end. And if we don't do that, then yes, things are going to continue. The kind of small-mindedness and parochialism doesn't help the general cause either. And so rather than hating on somebody, well, maybe you need to just do what a community organizer does, which is to sit down and understand where they're coming from, because that makes a difference and you gain a friend in the process.
Wow. Thank you. So this last question I was going to save for just two people, but I think I'm going to ask you each to give me 2 minutes, and I have a 1-minute sign.
That's not good for a minister.
Okay, so we'll just make believe it's closing. And just very quickly, if you could just let the audience know, what is your vision for the future of African Americans and other people of color to be successful in New Haven and Hamden? And so whoever wants to start is fine. Okay, thank you.
So, again, I'm coming from a municipal perspective. So I think that the biggest thing that a local government or that a mayor could do and that it ties in nicely with the discussion on community activism, because I think that investing in our neighborhoods and working to revitalize neighborhoods, and portions of that are as simple as cleanups and are as complex as gentrification and the importance of ownership versus renting, which we could have 3-panel discussions on and it would be worthwhile. 20 years ago, I got involved in government and in civic involvement through a thing called neighborhood revitalization zones. They're NRZs for short. It's a state statute that Bill Curry shepherded through many years ago. And what it does is it allows for neighborhood residents in lower income neighborhoods, of which I was a member of mine that was in the southern part of Hamden on the east side. And there was a second one that was in the southern part of Hamden on the west side, State Street and Highwood. And as a young man, I think I was 20 or so at the time, 19, 20, and then did it through its conclusion. It brought it's a real grassroots effort, and it brings people together to identify what things are missing in their community and what things that are needed to help their families and to help their community thrive. So out of that effort came comprehensive improvement plans for 2 spots in Hamden, and that delivered a school and money in infrastructure and money into commercial development and money into home ownership programs and rehabilitation programs. But as important as that, it got people talking to each other. And there were people from the east side that I don't think ever had real relationships with people on the west side, even though they were facing a lot of similar issues. So we're bringing that back in Hamden. 20 years later, we're bringing back the NRZs. We're working on things like opportunity zones. We're trying to expand the hours of community centers so that people have places to, kids have places to go, and people people of all ages and races have places where they can recreate and talk with their neighbors. Before I pass the mic, I want to mention apathy, because I think that we all need to talk and think about that a little more. We are in a society of 24-hour pounding news. It's on the television, every station, and it's on our social media, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, and let's be honest, most of it's negative, right? And I can't fault it for being negative. I do the same thing. You hear something that you're mad about and you say something. But when there's all that negativity coming out from all angles of the world and not a lot of communication on some of the good things that are happening, whether they be local or otherwise. Got my 1-minute marker. Feel like I'm at a debate now. It only helps to really promote that apathy, and it's hard enough to get over it to begin with. I forget who said that you talk to kids and people say things are never going to change. I hear that a lot. I hear that from kids. I hear that from adults. And I don't have the answer. And one of the reasons that I was really happy to come here tonight was not only to talk, but to listen. And I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more, hopefully, even with this closing, about what are ways that we can try to address that apathy and engage people, because there are a lot of folks that want to improve people's lives and have the opportunity to do so, and negativity only pulls that down.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. So what is your vision for the future of African Americans and people of color to be successful in the New Haven and Hamden area?
Well, I would say generally, and it may sound trite, but believe that you're a person of value and purpose. To believe in yourself and to understand that other people are in some ways the same scared folks as you are when it comes to human interaction. And so believing in yourself and having confidence takes you a long way towards being able to interact with individuals who are different than yourselves. And in fact, you learn more as a result of being involved. Even if you end up not liking the person, I didn't say that. Even if you end up not liking the person, you don't like the person from the standpoint of the interaction, not because of something like the color of the skin, the color of the hair, the way the person walks. One lady said in church one day, she said out to the pastor, she said, I don't like this woman. And he asked her why. And she said, because I don't like the way she walks. And I thought, that's a very superficial reason not to like someone. But we do it all of the time in our own ways. We judge the book by its cover. And so I think, conversations, not just conversations, but individual projects, painting a wall, cleaning the floor, doing something that is not connected to the actual action of activism makes it possible, as the mayor said, to be able to break down certain walls. Because all of you know, there's somebody in every race who's racist. Not just one race is racist. And so how do you break down those walls? Well, you try to be engaged with individuals around some tangible project. And so if you don't like the individual, that's okay. As I said, you're not liking the person. I'm not saying you shouldn't like a person. I'm really saying that if you don't, it's from the standpoint of being informed and not being uninformed and ignorant. And I don't think any of us want to be ignorant, if truth be told. So how do you be able to do that? And to know, by the way, that sometimes, you have to study in order to be able to become engaged in that very process of learning from other individuals. You think about, just a quick thing, because I know she's going to put up this 1 minute sign. But think about the first time that you ventured out of your own comfort zone and how good you felt after having had the experience. Well, there are more of those to come, and I think that we can do some things in our community if we do indeed value who it is that we are, show that we're proud, and to be able to interact with individuals who are different from ourselves, because that strengthens the community, and it makes us it makes it a little bit easier for us to work on the big projects that really need to be tackled in this city, in the area, in the state, and certainly in this country.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll go back to what I said. I think that one way and a vision that I see is that people have equal access to good jobs, good paying jobs, and that's across the board, because I think that starts there. Home ownership, that pride, education, closing that gap. I think that if we all own a piece of that and help and do our part and hold people accountable and ourselves accountable to make sure that every student has a quality education and have the opportunity to have that, and great books and access to the tools that they need. I think that if we have a lot of agencies in our community, but we need to hold them accountable. A lot of agencies work with the reentry community, but we need to hold them accountable. A lot of people do things around housing. And that small little amount, $10,000, is a lot, but that's just one group. We need more entities that are making money from our community to give back to the community so that everyone has access. I think that if we all work together and push towards that and hold ourselves accountable and look at ways that we can work together to find more jobs and really revitalize our communities, it's a win for everyone. It doesn't matter which community you live in. If people are invested in that community, if people care about the schools, if people care about jobs, and people are advancing, then my dream and my vision is that we all move forward together.
Thank you.
My vision for New Haven and Hamden and beyond is that people who are mostly impacted by all the injustices that go on in our nation will stand up and believe that they can make changes. I think it begins when we realize that we are one people, that anything that hurts one of our brothers and sisters should hurt us because we are all one. And when we can get to that point that we all care about what's going on in this nation, and mine is mostly around criminal justice and prisons primarily, But we just look at what's happening in our prison system and how people are coming out, and we look at the broken spirits and the shattered minds and people in solitary being tortured. We have to look at all that stuff, and you know why it's important? People may say, well, it's not happening to me, or that they shouldn't have did what they did, but the reality is those people are coming back to our community. And if they've come back to our community and they're broken and their minds are shattered, we are gonna all suffer from that. So my vision is that we will one day recognize that what hurts one of us hurts all of us.
Thank you.
So I guess what I hope is that in the future of New Haven, one, we continue to generate more leaders, but that the leaders that we generate recognize that some of those people who we think of as apathetic are not apathetic, they're feeling. And it is what they are feeling that is keeping them from moving, right? So that is not apathetic. That is really the fact that they've had experiences that have told them that what you are talking about is not the way to move forward. But there's usually a way to get to those people. And I think that the leaders that we have need to be more concerned with why they can't make that connection. Because I think if you talk to the Black Lives Matter girls, I think if you talk to the people at Ice to Be, I think if we talk to the people at New Haven Rising, and I can go down the list, they have a lot of young people who are not apathetic, whom people think of as apathetic. They figured out how to make contact with those young people and get those young people to feel something, get those young people to express in a way that some of us who are a little bit older can't do. I've had the experience of going and knocking on doors and talking to people about voting. We do voters drives, people don't want to, why? What's the point? Nothing's gonna change, right? But I say to them, listen, you want some power though, right? Forget voting for a second, you want some power. And then I start explaining to them, you know, people don't come to your neighbor. You know why they don't come to your neighbor? Because you're not on the list. And they ask me, what's this list you're talking about? And I say, well, there's a list that all of us who are running for office go by. And if you ain't on the list, there's no point in talking to you because you don't vote. And then I tell them, but if you vote twice, you get on the list. And now I got to come to your door. And that same person who you tried to go to with the voter drive that doesn't want to sign up says, well, I want you coming to my door, so you got to listen to me. And so what I'm saying is we've got to, as leaders in this community and any other community, particularly in communities of color, figure out how we talk to our own people. We can't talk to our people the way that we think we should be talking, and we have to talk to our people in a way that they can hear us because they do feel. And we would be foolish to believe that they don't feel. So that's my vision.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have one more question, and it's a general question. So we at Albertus College, as President Camille said, we really want to work very closely to the with the community. So how can members of the Albertus College community get more involved in politics, organizing, and activism in the African American community? And that's generally a question for the audience, I think, but also for panel members if they want to.
I'll say that the NAACP, we have a membership table over there. You become a member, and not just a paying member, but an active member. There's something for everyone. Any interest you have, there's something that we can sign you up for, and the need is great. But we have too few people helping, and it's a volunteer organization. So I will invite people to do that. It's $30 per year. Also, you don't have to be a member to get involved. You can just come out, and if it's something that is of interest to you, work with us. And also, we want to make sure that we're registering every person. So we always are doing volunteer work around the community. We can always use helping hands doing that. So that's one way that people can get involved.
My question was, how could Albertus Magnus, as a college, work with the community? Yes.
So, first of all, I'm Shirley Ellis West. I'm very active in my community, have been active in everything from the NAACP to politics on down. But presently, I'm a student here at Albertus for the past 2 years. I take classes in the evening program. And one of the things that get me really excited about coming here is that there are many students of color in the evening program. And these students of color, they range from 19, 18-year-olds to 61-year-olds like myself. And one of the ways that I'd like to see the college get more involved with the African American community, because you can do it with, you don't have to go outside of campus. There are so many of us with voices and something to say, something of value that this college can take, can hear, take advantage of, and support those many challenges that many of us are seeing in our own community. You can start right here with the students of color that you have. And I'm speaking to the evening program because that's the program that I'm experiencing, and that I had no idea there were so many of us on this campus with a voice and something of value to add to the college campus.
Thank you very much. Over here, please.
I too am a student here at Albertus, and I'm also representing Black Lives Matter New Haven. So as a student here at Albertus and a resident, lifelong resident of the Ville, so this is my neighborhood, I've plenty of times run through Albertus Magnus campus. I would say I would make the school available to the people that are directly around in your neighborhood. Get in touch with us and form something that the youth can come to. You guys have an amazing athletics center here. Let our kids come and play basketball, have open gym days, and put that out there for the school, for the kids, so that they can be encouraged by getting on a college campus, and they may not do that on their own. They may not have the ability to maybe do that or even to think about doing that, but coming on the campus and seeing so many Black and brown faces and seeing some of their parents and their mothers or their sisters, you know, coming here, and then them knowing that they have a day or two without the month that they can come and just play basketball. Or if you guys do programs, you know, I'm an online student, so if you had something that allowed maybe some of the youth to come out and to experience something with technology, because we need a lot of Black and brown faces in technology. Something like that with our youth, but make it so that the kids that are around here, I grew up right there on Newhall Street, so they can walk here. And I think that that would be like super effective, super fast.
Well, thank you so very much.
Hi, I'm an undergrad student as well, and probably more of the professors know that I'm like extremely involved in the campus community. I'm part of a lot of different clubs and organizations, and I think the biggest thing that we need on the Albertus campus in order to encourage that outreach to the community is honestly having things like this, because I feel like there is a lack of education and a lack of awareness on campus where students don't know that there's opportunities like this, you know, right around the corner, right here in our community. And I think I remember one of you guys said this should have been something that was happening years ago. This shouldn't be the first one that we're having. And I think this is a really good step in the right direction. And I really feel like a shift is coming and a change is coming. And I think if we continue to have events like this and continue to plant that seed within the Albertus community, students are going to feel supported and feel like they can help out outside of their community. And I think a big thing is us starting within the Albertus community and raising us up in order for us to outreach. Because if there isn't even a community here, how can we expect to help anyone else? So I think that's really important.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sharon Jones McCann, and I feel that Albertus can not only help here, but step out into the community. Right up the street is Hamden Keefe Center, Partnership. There are community centers in New Haven. Albertus can come out into the community, help get things started where the students and children in the community could know about Albertus and want to come here. So if they give out into the community, they can get back.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, Charmaine.
Hi. I'm Shah. I'm the founder and president of the Student Justice League. And to really just piggyback off what everyone said, I think what Alberta should do is not to be scared of what's on the other side of that gate. As what they've said, there are young people everywhere. We're in the middle of the Ville. There are so many different neighborhoods in New Haven, and it's to take the initiative. There are people willing to help. People want to connect with us, but we have to take the step ourselves, and then people will trust us.
Wow, thank you.
Can I just add to that? Because both of you, well, three of you actually have talked about what I felt, and I thought it was kind of little, but it's important. Like when I came today, I had to end up walking all the way down several blocks to get here, to turn in here, when there's a gate right there, but it's locked.
Oh, yeah.
So how about we just take some of these gates down? Because what kind of a message are we sending to New Hallville when everything is all gated up? So people can't even just cross the street and get in here.
Okay, thank you. Yes?
I just wanted to follow up on several of the comments quick, because one of the pieces that I think we often look at but don't always have an answer for is how to better communicate between the city of New Haven and the town of Hamden, because our borders are imaginary, right? We're all one community, and Albertus is geographically located in a perfect spot
Right in the
where
middle.
if you were to open it up to different community activities and discussions and sports opportunities and rec opportunities, you'll have Hamden and New Haven kids from the neighborhood,
Okay.
and it'll help to break that down.
Thank you. I've gone over our time limit. I do want to thank our speakers and representatives from the community. I want to thank all of you for coming out on this rainy evening, and I hope we will have more of these forums. I think this was a great success. We do have food on the other side of the panels here. I would also invite you to look at our art gallery. That's, say it, Sharon. Yes, the art gallery where we have pictures up and sayings in celebration of Black History Month. So thank you again for coming, and have a great evening.